Welcome to ADHD Focus, where we explore what ADHD really means, from diagnosis to real-life solutions and how to navigate it with confidence. This is your guide to understanding ADHD and living well with it. Here's your host, Dr. David Pomeroy.
Hello, this is Dr. David Pomeroy, host of ADHD Focus. Thanks for joining us today. This is the podcast which works to expose myths about ADHD and bring you reliable information about all aspects of ADHD. And one thing that's often missed and thankfully is getting more known and talked about is people hiding their neurodivergence, I guess. They don't know they've had ADHD or that they're on the spectrum perhaps, but they're masking it. And my guest today, Evan Monez, is someone who we've been talking about that phenomenon and wanted to bring that to you today. Evan is an ADHD coach dedicated to helping adults with ADHD find more balance and ease in work and life with tailored and supporting strategies. She is a recovering attorney and was not diagnosed with ADHD until she was a practicing lawyer. She is particularly passionate about working with late diagnosed adults. I guess late diagnosed means if you're over 30 and you were diagnosed, that's close enough to late. Particularly people in demanding careers such as medicine or the law, many people at corporate structures, and people who appear to be doing well on the outside, but they are struggling and exhausted. Evan, welcome to the program.
Thanks, David. Glad to be here. And that late diagnosed term, I feel like is the easiest shorthand for, perhaps more nuanced idea, as everything is with ADHD. It's really, working with people who often have made it to some level of externally recognized success, but with a lot of secret or unseen internal struggle. Like me, I was practicing attorney, almost 30 years old when I got diagnosed. But I also include in that people who, maybe got a diagnosis when they were much younger and were given some meds and then no education or skills in how to, work with their own brains in ways that actually work for them. But yeah, it's that like compensating anxiety that helps you get there at great personal cost is sort of the more nuanced idea.
The compensating initially maybe for the anxiety, but then that turns into anxiety about the fact that you're spending a whole lot more energy than everybody else seems to be doing to do it. And I think of it as something that starts maybe it continues unconsciously. It's just something people pick up, and particularly I can remember in my own case, there were times when I said things inappropriately, commented about someone or yelled out something during a basketball game at somebody that was really pretty rude and out of place. And so it's just, okay, I shut down saying anything. And a lot of times didn't talk to people in what would have been social situations. For me, that protected me against the embarrassment of saying the wrong thing, but it came across to other people as being kind of aloof and not interesting or interested in interacting. So that cost me that ability to have more social interactions.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, if we're talking about masking, it really in a lot of ways for a lot of us is an unconscious thing that it's a survival mechanism. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we're doing what we need to do to get by, and might not have a word for it or for why we're doing it. And might even have some like complicated internal feelings around the fact that we're doing it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
my example, that, you know, I've heard a lot of clients say similar things, even as recently as this week around, the sort of untruths, let's say, around, you know, someone asks, how are you doing on X assignment? And like, oh, it's going great. I'll have it to you in a couple days, when really it hasn't been started.
Mm-hmm.
And it, to the point, and that I really do think that that develops as a survival mechanism,
Mm-hmm.
to the extent that, you know, myself, someone who is classic ADHD oversharer in a career where I'm like have to be openly vulnerable with people, like I think people would say I'm a pretty genuine person, but
Mm-hmm.
taking one of those like strengths assessments, and I know that I was thinking about masking behaviors while I was
Mm.
taking that because honesty came up really low, even though it
Oh.
describes as like being genuine. And I'm like, oh, right. Because I'm thinking about all those times I lied about having started on something that I hadn't because I didn't know why I hadn't. And I was mad at myself for not having done it. And I was also behind
Mm-hmm.
on 10 other things. And I'm not going to tell my boss or when I was a kid, you know, my teachers, my parents that, you know, I failed in this way. I'm
Yeah.
going to lie about it and hope that I pull it all together with the urgency to make it look like I was telling the truth. So no one ever knows how behind I was.
Yeah. Meanwhile,
That
you're
can have
feeling
like a, yeah, like a deep internal cost of like, am I a dishonest person? Like,
just, I'm no good. I should be able to do better, and you get into the whole shame. I'm not, I'm not valuable. And what I'm not able to live up to what everybody else is doing. Um,
yeah. And yeah, and I think it can cause a lot of like shame. And I don't know, to this day, I have some personal feelings around the word integrity because that I think a lot of
mhm.
coaches use that. I think a lot of people don't have any weird baggage around, but because I have all that stuff around, like
Mhm.
I wasn't honest because, and now I know I was trying to survive and I didn't really have the skills to do that in a healthy way. And, you know, that was
And
effective. But
yeah,
it wasn't like coming from a place of immorality. It was coming from a place of
no,
survival.
just that survival thing that you just fall into. And I think it's if people were most of the time, you say, "How are you doing?" "Oh, I'm fine." Um, and are you really? Or is that just a way to kind of conversation? You're saying that, whereas if you're really honest, well, yeah, I'm really having a hard time because one thing and another. I remember um, I was in the doctor's lounge at a hospital and with one other doc in there, and he was getting up or to get a cup of coffee or something. And I had just come in. He said, "Oh, how you doing?" And I was right at a point of feeling very vulnerable. I was in the midst of a divorce. I didn't quite know how to deal with that emotionally and tapped out in terms of things I had to do with patients. And I just said, I'm really not doing very good right now. And instead of just saying, "Oh, well, that's too bad," and continuing on, he asked, "Oh, gee, what's going on? I'd be glad to listen." So was that support and totally unexpected. Um, but I was being honest and open and genuine. And I can remember it kind of surprising me. Instead of saying, "Oh, I'm fine," and I heard that referred to. There's an acronym for fine. I'm effed up, insecure, neurotic, and exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
But that's hidden. I can hide behind the word fine, but I know I'm really not sure about these things. If people really know about it, then they'd think, "Oh, well, you really are not a very good doctor. You're just kind of not cutting it as an attorney, you know." Um, and that imposter syndrome of feeling like if people really knew the amount of work it took to do this, and then I think as that keeps on going on, and particularly when, yes, now you've gotten through education stages and you're in a high level functioning job where then it gets to feeling depressed that why am I not doing as well when you may be? You just don't think you're as perfect as you need to be, or anxious about having to keep it up. And that's the long-term cost.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that's really important to me to touch on in any conversation I have around masking is this idea that it is so common. It is such a common coping mechanism, and it's normal. Now I'm going to go on a little tangent before I get to the point I was going to make, which is, I've had conversations about masking, which, because of my own ADHD, I can't remember if they were with you in preparation for this or with someone else.
Right.
Like, I think they were. But about like, where's the line? Is masking inherently unhealthy? And I think, as with most things, it is, a fuzzy spectrum of, maybe you don't always want to have the conversation about why you're not fine. And
Yeah.
and you don't feel safe for whatever reason being like, I'm not fine, but I don't want to talk about it, or whatever it is. There's nothing, I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. Like, I think that that is a normal part of how we communicate. And also, if we can get past that in situations where we feel safe, or, branch out and try it in situations that we're not as sure about, we might find that support that we're lacking. Because now, getting back to my original point, so many people with ADHD are masking, especially, the sort of now better known to be typical story of the people in, successful high pressure careers who are secretly struggling, what we call high achievers sometimes, even though that term itself is iffy for me because we don't feel it inside.
Yeah. By other measures, societal measures are high achievement.
Yeah. But if we're talking about like attorneys, I am always more interested in people's lived experience than I am in statistics. But one statistic I think is really interesting is there are studies showing that attorneys are, and now I'm going to remember the exact amount, but way more, I think it's more than twice, don't quote me on it, but more than twice as likely to identify as having ADHD as the general population of diagnosed people with ADHD. So there's a ton of people in the profession, a ton of people in academia, in tech,
in medicine.
But we don't think of those as being careers that people with ADHD are in, and they aren't necessarily that friendly to ADHD in a lot of ways, even though they are in the ways that get us all into those careers. Yeah. But so all these attorneys with ADHD, whether they know it or not, are trying to pretend that they don't, are trying to pretend that they're not behind, are lying and saying they've started on a thing they haven't started on, and saying to themselves, what's wrong with me? Everyone else can do it. I see the person in the next office doing the thing on time, and they said they started it 2 days ago, and I believe them, so they must be doing better than me. That person might also be masking and lying about
Yeah.
having started it 2 days ago because they don't want you to know because you look like you're doing so well. And
Yes.
so,
And it kind of
I,
compounds, uh,
yeah.
where I think,
So,
in, and maybe it is a human trait to want to seem like you're doing okay. You're matching, you don't want to think, well, I'm not, even say to someone, well, obviously you're doing much better than I am because you can get all this done, whatever. Um, but when it is um, masking, hiding, um, something that can be changed, something that's an explanation so that people can understand it's not your fault. It's something you've
yeah.
done. It's a survival mechanism. It's a thing you've learned to do over time. I think of there's more than one girl in high school that I've seen that, and this is a pattern, and I think it's more with girls than boys, where they're bound and determined that they're going to get the homework done, even if they stay up till 1 o'clock in the morning. Then they have to get up at 6 to get to school, so they're sleep deprived. But
Mm-hmm.
part of that is it's going to be perfect, because if it's perfect, I can't be criticized. No one can question it.
Mm-hmm.
And that takes a whole lot of energy besides trying to stay awake at 10 o'clock in the morning, um, in terms of maintaining that perfection. Well, then, of course, in school, they say, well, you've got good grades. You can't have ADHD. So, no, you
Uh-huh.
can't get accommodations for this and that. And yes, you've got good grades and you're staying up till 1 a.m. and you have two tutors and your parents are helping you sort out how to put together an outline or whatever. So there's all the support and things that many other people don't need. Um, and yeah, maybe they aren't getting an A and an A plus, but that cost of masking is pretty high. Um,
Yeah. And it's sort of an interesting paradox there of like, there are things that are genuinely harder. And I was
mhm.
that girl, who first couldn't get started. So I didn't start on it until late, but then had to do it. I mean, this kind of goes back to
Mhm.
uh, that pattern I was already talking about. But and then there is the like, well, I started on this so late that now it has to be perfect when I turn it in, so, and then that takes so much more energy. And so all the things we're doing are already taking us more energy, and then we're spending extra energy on top of that to pretend that we're fine, that it's not taking us extra energy, and
Yeah.
everything's okay. And it's a lot, and not everyone is going through that, but a
Mhm.
lot of people are and are pretending that they're not. So it's sort of like
Yeah.
a weird
And that's
paradox there
that's the whole thing.
that I think is an important part of this conversation because, and again, not like if you're masking, this is your fault. Not at all. But the more that we can let our masks down, the more situations we can
Mhm.
do that and like let people know they're not alone. I've talked to several clients, thinking of one right now who was like, I worry about telling people I'll have ADHD and they'll judge me and all this stuff, but I wish I had more like neurodiverse community, and I'm like,
Mhm.
whatever choice you make for your own safety in any given situation is yours to make. There's no wrong choice. And also, if you tell someone that you're struggling with ADHD, you are way more likely to have them be like, "Oh my god, me too," than you are
Or
if you don't say anything.
or my son is, or someone they know. They may, and if they don't know about it, maybe they'd say, gee, how come that's so hard? And then as you get talking, they may start thinking, boy, that kind of sounds like me in school. And
Yeah.
I see a number of people who've gotten into conversation with a friend because they are feeling uncomfortable, having trouble. And I think that the point you make that being able to do that in a situation where you feel safe, you wouldn't, if there had been three other doctors and probably even one other doctor in that room, I wouldn't have said anything. I wouldn't have said, no, I'm having a hard time. Um, but this was someone I trusted, a genuine person, and just seemed like someone that it was okay to say that. Um, Even if he'd kind of pass it off, it's still, I didn't feel bad about saying that.
Yeah.
So saying it in a safe place, and maybe that gets into the tendency of those of us with ADHD to overshare, that at times we may have overshared and it's not a good place to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I shouldn't have told my law firm when I was like, "Oh my gosh, I got this diagnosis that made so much more sense." Now but it's funny, this conversation with this client helped me realize that now I'm in sort of a privileged position in a kind of way of people always ask you what you do, and I'm an ADHD coach. So pretty much anyone I talk to is gonna know that I have ADHD, and if they want to know more, it's gonna want to know more.
Mm-hmm.
And if they find out about the attorney thing and don't know how common it is for people like in professions that
Mm-hmm.
historically have not been stereotyped as ones that lots of people with ADHD are in, like then I can tell them that whole story and they might be like, "Oh my gosh, I know someone. Oh my gosh, me," you know.
Yep. Yep. I think that
Um,
one of the things that, in terms of helping to get past the shame and dealing with all that negative self-talk is what it amounts to, is doing some cognitive behavioral therapy around that. And that is one of the things that's very helpful with ADHD, in terms of, because I think anybody with ADHD is going to have negative emotional experiences, negative self-talk grows out of that. And
mhm.
you can look at other strategies, even talking about masking and things like that, but there's still these feelings that you have to deal with. And feelings don't just go away over the time. It's easy, not necessarily easy, costs a lot of energy, but put them in a box and hide them away. Um, but then that's not dealing with them. It takes more and more energy to it. And I think that, just to make it clear, what I'm talking about in the cognitive behavioral therapy is a strictly applied 12 to 14 sessions once a week, in a specific progression of things. And in any studies that are done, that's the format that's done. Because every single therapist is going to say, yes, I use CBT in my work.
Uh-huh.
You do. That's just reframing how you think about it. Um, but so when I say that in terms of its value, that's what I'm talking about, that specific um, progression and pattern of doing things. But I think at least some kind of therapy, whether it's that, which is one of the gold standard ones, but it helps to realize that um, it's okay. It's a survival mechanism. It's okay to have done that. It's not bad. You aren't defective because of that. And that there are a lot of feelings and uncomfortable feelings and dealing with that. Um, and coaching is not necessarily directed at the feelings part. They're going to show up. But okay, now what can you do about it? What
Mm-hmm.
can you do so you don't have to mask and have strategies to get the work done that you need to get done.
Yeah. Well, and for me, I always love when a client also has a good therapist. Because I think feelings are, I don't just come up. I think they're often very relevant to coaching.
Oh, yeah.
ADHD and feelings, I'm not just here as like your dopamine mechanic. How can you like pull the triggers to move forward? Because that's not how we experience life. The shame is a huge barrier. It's like I can't get started, and now I have shame about not being able to get started, and that's its own huge obstacle. And so in coaching, I try to be very clear with my clients that there are things that are for therapy. We're not going deep into the past traumas, even if those might be ADHD related, to heal those. But the fact that you're feeling shame is extremely relevant. And in a good coaching relationship, I want them to feel safe telling me that that is part of it. And yes, then it's like, okay, what are we going to do with this information? How are we going to help you get past that to do the thing? Maybe reminding yourself, having something that reminds you that you're not alone is something. And maybe you need a Post-it that reminds you that you're not the only person struggling with this in order to go and write that email. It's still super relevant. But love it when people also have that other support for that deeper work that I think it does tend to be relevant for people in my sort of niche. I say that being one of those people who needs both coaching and therapy.
So how does what do you think that we're in the, I guess, evolution of, oh, you have ADHD, or okay, I have ADHD. I don't know that automatically leads to, oh, I must have been covering it up. Oh, there's this whole thing of masking. Where does that show up, or how can people be safely made aware of that? So it's not an accusation, but kind of do you realize how much it's costing you?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. That I'm not sure I have a clear answer for, because everyone's journey is different. But I think for a lot of people, finding out later in life that they have ADHD, and again, later in life being a very squishy term, there can be a range of feelings, from relief, like, oh, now I understand why these things were so hard and I'm not broken. Awesome. And, a lot of other things, shame, regret, all kinds of things that can come up, and all kinds of things that you can realize, this is hard for me because ADHD, and this isn't, maybe also because of ADHD. I'm good at this other thing. What is my point? I think that knowing that we're not alone, that we're not broken, that we've been trying to survive in a world that has not really given us the most helpful tools to do that in a healthy way, and that masking and other coping and survival mechanism behaviors are a part of that. I guess I see it as all just sort of part of the puzzle of helping to understand yourself so that you can help yourself in like a loving and supportive, self-supportive and compassionate way. It's not to be like, oh, you were doing these bad masking behaviors.
Yes.
I
And
mean,
it's definitely not masking bad behavior. It is
yeah. Like here I
survival. And
am telling you in
that's the way you
public
are.
that I've lied about lied about
Yeah.
things before being on time. I don't think that makes me a bad person. I
No,
did then because I was in this hole of like, what's
you
wrong
knew you
with
weren't,
me?
yeah, you knew you weren't being honest, but then again, you didn't want to say, well, actually, I haven't started yet, but I'll have it to you by tomorrow or whatever. Um, and it strikes me in terms of the whole thing about masking, which I think is a big part of having ADHD, being neurodivergent in other ways. And I think yeah, I see a lot of talk about it and things about it in relation to autism, that people with autism often um, will learn to have social interactions where they have a script that they follow or know. When someone says, "How are you?" This is what you say, and you say hello, and you say goodbye, and you say thank you, so that it comes across as the reciprocal conversation when that's not a natural thing for someone with autism to do. And so
Mm-hmm.
they have to be aware of it and thinking about it. And it's costing them energy to, okay, be sure you're doing this, be sure you're coming across um, as normal. And thankfully, I think more people are embracing the fact that, yeah, okay, I have autism. That's part of who I am. And I think the same with ADHD. So it strikes me that, well, just knowing, oh, I have ADHD, that's great, doesn't automatically mean someone's going to think, oh, and I must have been hiding all that. So then
Yeah.
it comes on me and maybe on you, anyone who's helping people with ADD, to point out that this is something you've done as a survival mechanism. It costs you a lot of energy, and that can be part of why you're also feeling depressed, and I see people are just burned out. One person, and I love the transformation in this guy. When I first saw him, he'd been working for one of the largest software tech companies that's right around the corner from me in Redmond, Washington, for 20 plus years. And he just came in and said, I'm not sure I can do this anymore. This expectation that you're going to keep on advancing and get up to higher and higher levels. I don't want to try to manage 50 people. I'm at my max working with a team of 10, and I'm stressed and I don't know how to get my work done and their work done. And I'm trying to make it look like I can get my work done. And so we came around to thinking, a medical leave to have some time to recover from your burnout and your anxiety, which is affecting your whole life. And he realized, I really don't like what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And he also is a very caring person, very into researching and really understanding. So he got very deeply into figuring out his own ADHD and how it works. He just got his certification as an ADHD coach, and he's now doing coaching because some friends had said, hey, my daughter's having a hard time. And he was able to help this 16-year-old look at things differently. And another friend, and they said, you ought to be a coach. And so that grew. And I think that's exactly fits himself and his style of relating to people.
Mm-hmm.
But the realization that I'm just burned out, I can't do this. And that may be the first step someone has to seeing that, oh, and ADHD has been leading to all that. So then it's incumbent on those of us who are starting working with a client that understanding the masking part is there, probably it is really common, and it costs a lot of energy. Um, I saw something
Yeah.
earlier today that I thought was fascinating. The link between the way brain function and dopamine and reward systems, and the fact that with ADHD, our reward system, which depends on dopamine getting to the right place in the brain, isn't as sensitive. So it takes more
Mm-hmm.
dopamine to get that. And one of the things that triggers dopamine is sugar. And so at the end of the day, you've spent all this energy masking. Well, that uses up the brain it needs glucose. It's got to have a sugar source.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, glucose in your body can come from meta metabolic process of metabolizing protein as well as carbohydrates. Um, but the energy your brain is expanding with keeping your masking going, trying to do everything you're supposed to do, and you're not as organized, whatever. It's really short on dopamine. You want a dopamine hit so that you can keep going. So that snack at 4 o'clock in the afternoon may be an energy drink, which has a lot of sugar in it, or a candy bar, or something to get that sugar hit. The end result, now you're gaining weight because you're having sugar to keep yourself going through the day. And I thought that was a really interesting string all the way along where it's it's easy then to think, oh, I shouldn't be having a candy bar. I shouldn't be doing this. Anytime there should, as far as I'm concerned, is there's shame.
Mm-hmm.
It's a negative. And needing that sugar right then, it's not your fault. That's the metabolism of ADHD and what your brain's looking for. Now, whether you can compensate by having a higher protein plus sugar snack or having more protein at lunch so it keeps you going with that energy. I don't know. This is kind of the first step in the first time I've ever seen that sequence. Um, but I think it's helpful to know that it's not because of a shortcoming that you're looking for the Snickers bar at 4 o'clock. But it's your brain saying, I need something to go on. And it's also, I need some reward for the fact that I've been spending all my energy trying to deal with things. Um, so,
Yeah. I think, and that, like, relating that back to the masking, it's like another thing that we're spending energy on, but, but that also the throughout the day, the executive functioning that we have to do, the stuff that is, supposedly the easy stuff that is actually, in fact, the hard stuff,
for us, yeah.
takes energy, and our brains don't work the way that everyone has told us, and we need those dopamine hits, and are going to seek them somewhere. Yeah,
And
I guess, like, I'm not concerned about anybody's weight. I don't care about that at all. It's but like, knowing that the understanding of why the sort of dopamine seeking that's behind a lot of behaviors, like
scrolling
addictive
on the
behaviors,
phone.
scrolling, yeah, other like addictions, and not like all kinds of things, or just not having the dopamine that we need to get started on something is part of it. And I think understanding that dopamine connection can be really helpful. For me as a coach, I find that knowledge helpful and enlightening in some ways, but I'm way more interested in people's like lived experience of what is that like. Like when, I figured out when I'm crashing, what helps me is knowing what time that's going to happen and taking a tiny, tiny dose of instant release Adderall an hour before that. And so like figuring out where those pain points are and what you really need in that moment that's going to support you.
And that's where the sugar gives dopamine everywhere, including on some of the executive function areas. Adderall or any of the stimulants, it's a much more focused, if you will, enhancement of dopamine and getting the dopamine, particularly in the prefrontal cortex and areas where the executive is, that executive functions, it increases the levels of dopamine to carry those signals so that those functions work. So that's where, you can get that. The reward part of dopamine, maybe not as much of the executive function emphasis by having a candy bar or an energy drink. Or you can get it more specifically by realizing 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, that's a really tough time. How about at 3:30, I set a reminder and take my 10 milligrams of Adderall or 10 milligrams of methylphenidate, whichever. So that then the executive function's boosted. And yes, there's energy with that. And you get past that kind of, well, I'll pick up my phone and see what's on here, or I know I like this game. I'll just take a little break. And then you're getting dopamine hits because you're gaining points or getting to another level in the game. But that's getting behind on whatever else you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. But I feel like if we're talking about energy and masking, an interesting thing that occurred to me earlier in this conversation, we're talking about the sort of when you brought up autistic people doing a lot of masking in conversations, and how when people who have ADHD people, autistic people are able to drop the mask a little bit and find each other and find people who communicate in similar ways, which those two communities, first of all, there's a lot of us that are in both. And those of us that aren't still really appreciate a lot of the communication styles. Like, I want all the context about your autistic special interest that you want to tell me about so that I understand exactly what the exciting part is about it, because it's exciting to me to know about the thing you're excited about. And, when my clients apologize to me for rambling, when a prospective client first meets me and I'm like, no, you said all of these things that were actually relevant and I was following. It can be such a difference when you find yourself with someone you feel safe with, who like gets you and is communicating on your level, and you don't have to mask. There can be so much energy in that that's so different from the, like, I just have to have these people that I have to interact with think that I'm normal to survive. That can be so much harder.
Do you think, and that brings up to me that something of, okay, kind of what do you do about it? How do you help not spend so much energy with it, be open about it, where it's safe, is our groups and group coaching, is that maybe a more effective way to do it? Because then people are able to share and see that they aren't the only one.
Yeah, I definitely think it can be. Having a group where other people are talking about going through similar things and seeing that you're not alone. I think, you can get that to some extent in one-to-one coaching, especially if your coach is also neurodivergent in similar ways, and has other clients that and can tell you like, no, I can promise you're not alone. I talked to someone, no details, but I talked to someone about this yesterday,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
10 minutes ago,
right, right.
and have experienced it. But in a group setting, having that community, it can be super helpful to get multiple perspectives and start to build that community, in spaces that, ideally are specifically designed to be safe for it.
So one other aspect of about masking, and I've seen more and more about this, particularly as there's very deservedly so more emphasis on women and ADHD that are late diagnosed and trying to find girls so they don't have to deal with all the things that come along with now you're 35 or 45 and you're wondering how come it's taking you so much energy and how come you aren't doing a good job at what you're supposed to be doing. Though I'd say, I think the most difficult roles that converge in one person is being a mother, having a job, and being wife and household, or being a single mom and trying to hold that all together. I don't think it's possible to do all of them as well as you want to. But that
Yeah.
the delay in diagnosis that comes from the masking. And one other physician who specialized in ADHD in this area a number of years ago had made done some video interviews and talking with teenagers. And he asked some girls, well, this comes up in the classroom and say you're missing details and not paying attention. Would the teacher know that? Well, of course not. I'm not stupid. I'm looking at her. That's a masking behavior. Boys could care less. They're looking somewhere else, or so it may be. Is masking more common in women? They have to live up to some expectations that aren't on men, societal pressures.
Yeah, more than some, many more than some. Yeah, I absolutely. I think, I mean, I could give a million examples of this from my clients, from my close friends. But probably the one that my heart goes to first is like my mom. Sorry if I'm outing you as having ADHD, mom, but she, my parents are both great, but there was so much more pressure on her to keep it all together, to like get us to school. She's also a financial planner, and she had great and very effective survival mechanisms that not the support that she needed, could have used. And now that she's retired, I see when she doesn't need to do that so much, I'm like, I was right. I did get it on both sides. It's not just dad. You were just holding it all together because you had to, because
that
And I see that now in, women that I'm close to, who have kids and jobs and are married to men who don't see that necessarily, or if they do, are maybe trying, but like just can't know how hard it is. And so many of those women also have ADHD. Like, they're brilliant people who are juggling a lot of things.
Yeah. And
Which
I could think of,
is a situation that a lot of people with ADHD get into, but also is really hard because the juggling part, we're good at all the things, but the juggling is hard.
of it. And
then our society, sorry, I realized I could rant about this for more than the length of a podcast about how, like, it's impossible. There isn't the support. I mean, part of why, I was raised and socialized as a woman, and I have opted out of some of those things because I can see how hard it is and how unsupported and these terribly unrealistic expectations that people are going to be like perfect parents, perfect at work, perfect in all these ways, have the perfect house when, clean house with no toaster or whatever.
Yeah.
When they have a dinner party with no support. And it's impossible. And then they beat themselves up and they try to make it look like they have it all together. And then think that everyone else has it all together.
And then they show up as being anxious because they're afraid they aren't going to keep it together, or they're depressed. And when you show up and a patient is focused on how anxious she is, then the doctor she's talking to, for instance, may, oh, you're anxious, then you need some help with anxiety. Here's a medicine that may help you, and maybe some therapy would help. And the focus becomes the anxiety and not what's under it. And there's more than one person I've seen who has been on an SSRI for anxiety for a long time. And we worked through the fact that, you've got ADHD. And one of the things she elects to do is, well, I'll try some medicine for it. She comes back and 3 months later says, I don't need that anxiety medicine anymore. Because my anxiety was how I was not holding things together, and it was impossible. And it still work to get up and get the kids lunch and one thing and another. But it's working so much better. I don't have the anxiety that it's not going to work or that I'm going to fail again.
Yeah.
I think that's the conditions that arise from ADHD end up masking the fact that that's what's there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is the case for a lot of people. Others of us also have a generalized anxiety disorder, and no amount of treating the ADHD will make it go away.
Right.
But
and absolutely, I want to say that it's something like
not that you're saying that isn't, but just want to make sure both those sides are seen.
Yes, thank you. I think that's important too.
And I also want to say, like, the things that I just ranted about can and do also happen not just on those gendered lines in families and relationships, but I think there is a big cultural and societal pressure on women to perform in all of these ways. That's why I really like working with parents, particularly moms, but also parents who find themselves in that dynamic in one way or another. There isn't enough support for parents in our culture, period. Like the fact that kids are off all summer, but parents still have to work. Like, you don't have childcare unless you can pay for summer camp that you have to sign up for, at midnight on whatever day, or else they're all full.
Back in October.
Is insane. Forgive ableist language, but that's wild, is what I should have said.
Yeah.
but I love working with parents, even though I'm not a parent, because I do see it. Like I'm not a parent because I have so much empathy that I'm like, I don't want to do that, but I want to be that support, which I think also there are lots of great ADHD coaches who are also parents, and I think being able to relate more specifically can also be helpful. But for me, like being able to see it and not be in it myself, some people find that really helpful. And I just love helping people for all kinds of reasons, and that's one of them. See that all of the things they're struggling with are not their fault because they're uniquely flawed. Yes. We have structural problems. Like lots of people have ADHD. I think the neurotypicals are the minority. Maybe it's confirmation bias for how I've set my life up at this point, but but everybody, you're not alone, and we have you're not weird or broken or anything. We have structural issues that make it harder.
Differences. Yeah.
That are not like that has to be that way. That is how it has come to be.
Yeah, but it fits society's picture. If, well, gee, you need to think this way, so we'll give you a good planner and we'll give you extra time on a test. As one ADHD coach says, yeah, you get extra time so you can try harder to think like a neurotypical.
Yeah. Oh man, the extra time accommodation, super helpful for some people. And absolute opposite of an accommodation for other people who like need the urgency and then are just gonna, waste extra hours not being able to concentrate.
That urgency that helps give them the adrenaline to get it finished.
Yeah, but I think my sort of utopia vision of an ideal future would be nobody needs an ADHD diagnosis. It doesn't even exist because there's just broad recognition that neurodiversity is real. Everyone, there is no one way that a brain can be, but
there has to be.
But also, no one is alone. No one's brain is wholly unique, and like there are different types and patterns of what your brain, how your brain might work that are all normal and natural. And like having a society where all of those things are supported as they should be so that we can all live with more ease.
Yeah. And recognize
is my ideal. Meanwhile, in my job, I try to help people live in the world that we're in and, find places where they can, do the thing that they love, the thing that's important to them with more ease. Hopefully with less masking and more ability to be themselves so that other people can see that it's okay to be yourself and do your thing your way.
So speaking of that, how would people find you to be able to get that kind of support?
Yeah, great question. So you can find me at monezadhdcoaching.com. I do a free consult for potential clients that there's buttons everywhere on my website to do that. That's the best way. It's kind of the best way to get in touch with me for anything because, email, you can reach me on email, but it's not as reliable as just setting a meeting with me.
Yes.
Put it that way.
Yeah. There's keeping track of all the emails and what's the important ones and what's not. That's one more.
Yeah. This is another way where, the fact that I continue to struggle with some things does make me better at my job. Conversely, I might have some imposter syndrome sometimes, but I'm great at helping people with the things that I still struggle with. So, but yeah, so you can reach me at monezadhdcoaching.com, where I do one-to-one coaching. Someday I may start a group coaching thing through there. But meanwhile, I do group coaching as well as other programming specifically for lawyers with ADHD at Dixon Life Coaching. So if you're a lawyer looking for group programming, you can also find me there. And then on social media, at Monez ADHD, on the various social medias that I have various levels of presence at any given time on, because I have ADHD.
And yes, does one have to be a recovering attorney to use the facilities at the Dixon coaching?
No, so our group coaching program currently is specifically for attorneys. But we have, a Live Well ADHD course. It's a hybrid course that I actually do the live portion of. So there's online, self-paced web course. And then I do what we call the accelerator, Live Well Accelerator, where in 6 weeks covers sort of the most important, impactful topics. But it's a really great course on how to sort of find well-being with ADHD, talking about, what are the things that tend to motivate us? How do you deal with overwhelming task list? And then that in-person portion, I think, is great because you get to talk to me and I give real examples and can answer questions. Because there's a specific time that you have to show up to get access to that. So
that's all.
We don't want to just leave you on your own with it. Because I think even in the self-paced part, there's great information there that I think is actionable. But one of the things that can be really hard with ADHD is you can get all the great strategies you want. Executing it is the real hard part. And so we want to make sure there is some live support for okay,
exactly that.
Now I know the 3 things that are most likely to motivate me. How do I figure out what that actually looks like in my life?
Well, and with that, we need to look at some of the realities of the amount of time we have to talk on a podcast.
Yep. Time. I guess it's real.
Yes, it is. And I think the important things are, to me, some of the most important things we've talked about in terms of masking. Those are learned behaviors. They're unconscious things. You don't stop and think about, and I've got to make sure I do this and that. And they're coping mechanisms. They're survival mechanisms. So we can get through our lives and do what we think is expected of us and just put out all that energy. And it's not your fault. It's not the fault of someone masking.
It's your brain trying to help you, but maybe not doing it in the way that is most helpful for you now.
Right. So my guest today has been Evan Monez, and Evan, has been great to talk with you about masking and how to help people unmask. And those
it's been my pleasure.
Listening, thank you for showing up again to listen to ADHD Focus, and I look forward to talking with you another time.
Thank you for listening to this edition of ADHD Focus with Dr. David Pomeroy. This show is not intended to be a recommendation for diagnosis or treatment of any condition for any specific person. Please consult your mental health professional or doctor managing your ADHD or mental health issues about any diagnosis or treatment-related information that you hear on the show. Refer your ADHD provider to this show if he or she would like more information.